Next we have the kicking skill, and here are the list of components. The first two being the introductory components, which students are hopefully demonstrating proficiency by at the end of grade 2, and with the rest of the components being fine-tuned by the end of year 5. Keeping in mind Lenny still has over a year before finishing grade 2, where these introductory components are expected to be proficient by. So the components are having eyes focused on the ball throughout the kick, the non-kicking foot placed beside the ball, forward and sideward swing of the arm opposite the kicking leg, bends knee of the kicking leg at least 90 degrees during the backswing, contacts ball on the top of the foot, and kicking leg follows through high towards the target area. So you can see in the video that Lenny has her eyes focused on the ball throughout the kick, which shows strengths in the first listed component. It appears to me that Lenny just kind of runs towards the ball before attempting to kick it. I don't believe she really places her non-kicking foot beside the ball, so I wouldn't say she's proficient at this component yet. As far as the rest of the components go, Lenny showed no signs of any forward or sideward arm swing of any kind, with the arms basically remaining at her side throughout the whole kick. There was no bend of the knee, and she just kind of threw her leg forward in an attempt to kick the ball. She performed more of a toe punt style kick, and there was no real follow through either. Here are the list of components showing Lenny's strengths and weaknesses throughout the kicking skill.
Just like the throwing skill, it's important when teaching the kicking skill that the main focus be on kicking for distance rather than accuracy. This will allow for proper techniques to be developed rather than having the students learn how to just poke at the ball as if they were trying to kick accurately. Using a big soft ball like a beach ball would allow students to want to kick as hard as possible without fearing that the ball may hurt them. The next step for Lenny would be to learn to work on. The skill would be placing her non-kicking foot beside the ball.
As children require a good deal of balance in order to achieve this, some balancing practice would be a good place to start with this one. This could be done by having Lenny standing on a balance beam or something similar and having her swinging her legs back and forth for the kicking motion.
It would be a good idea again to have Lenny experiment with different techniques throughout the various components of the kicking skill. By providing feedback and highlighting the correct techniques, Lenny would be able to get the feel for which technique works best and why. For example, having her try with no backswing of the leg compared to the proper technique of bending the kicking leg to 90 degrees during the backswing. Placing a soft object behind the ball that Lenny would have to knock over before kicking the ball would also really emphasise the need for this component. Also having her try and kick with her arms held by her side compared to the proper technique of swinging the opposite arm to the kicking foot forwards and sidewards.
Providing a visual cue on the ground besides the ball would be a good way for the students to know where to put their foot while the other foot kicks the ball. Also, just having students take one step before kicking is a good introductory activity, whether it be stepping over a line or something similar. To encourage the follow-through of the leg after contacting the ball, activities that require the object being kicked high up in the air or having the object suspended up off the ground would be beneficial. A fun game that could be played by students to practice the kicking skill could be one done with the use of balloons. Students would need to kick the balloon as hard as possible to see how long they could get it to stay up in the air. Could build on this by pairing up students and have them standing a few meters apart. Have one student kick the balloon up in the air, then try and run around the other student before the balloon hits the ground. If they are successful, they can take a further step apart and try again, and continue this until they can no longer make it back in time. Giving the students a chance to create their own balloon kicking game would also be a good way to build on this activity. The next skill we will look at is the catch, and here is a list of components that make up the entire catching skill. The first two are introductory ones, where proficiency should be demonstrated by the end of kindergarten, and the rest being fine-tuned by the end of grade 3. So the components are having eyes focused on the object throughout the catch, hands move to meet the object, feet move to place body in line with the object, hands and fingers relaxed and slightly cupped to catch the object, catches and controls the object with the hand only, and elbows bend to absorb the force of the object. So, with the catch, Lenny definitely has her eyes focused on the ball as she's catching it. Her hands move to meet the object throughout this video as she is able to catch the ball on both sides of her body. During one of the catches, she moves her feet towards where the ball is going slightly before making the catch, which is a great sign in being aware that this is necessary in order to make catches that are away from the body, and is a component of the overall catching skill. I wouldn't say that her hands are relaxed and slightly cupped when getting ready to catch the ball, nor would I say she controls the ball with her hands only, as she doesn't really move her arms and hands too far from their original position near the body. There is also no sign of her bending her elbows to absorb the force of the ball, as they remain almost locked throughout the whole catch. here being the components that Lenny shows strengths in, marked in green, and again the ones she still needs work on, marked in red.
I think it's important to mention here that while teaching the catching skill, it's strongly recommended that smaller objects are used rather than larger objects. Using larger objects encourages the use of the chest while catching, which may develop improper technique that may be difficult to change later on. With Lenny showing positive signs throughout the first 3 components, I will concentrate on the components which still need to be worked on. Working on the latter components will also help her reinforce the competencies in the introductory components. In order for Lenny to gain competency in catching with her hands only, she would need to pair up with someone that's a short distance away. Back and forth they could lob a small soft object, like a beanbag, to various positions around the body, which would require her to move her hands to various positions away from her body and using only her hands to catch the ball.
For teaching the importance of bending her elbows, an activity where she uses a shallow container to catch the object would really help her out. This would require her to really absorb the force of the incoming object in order to catch it in the shallow container. Or the old classic of pretending that the object is an egg is always a really good way to emphasize the importance of this component.
Overall with catching, it's just vital that lots of practice occurs with different sized, shaped objects and having them coming from as many different angles as possible. From low to high through to bouncing and rebounding. Providing opportunities for this needs to be the goal of anyone trying to teach the components that make up their catching skill. Lenny really loves a challenge, so a great game for her would be to practice catching, would be one that involves doing just that. Challenge her to catch objects that are dropped from above, thrown in the air, rebounded off the wall, bounced, ricocheted from floor to wall to floor, thrown underarm, overarm, maybe even with her back turned, then command her to turn quickly to catch the ball. Scores could be accumulated, and she could get as creative as she wants, coming up with her own variations of ways to catch.